Imagine a world of interest-free loans that pay themselves back. Let me explain. So imagine going into a bank and saying, I have $100,000 that I want to deposit. And the bank says, great, that's awesome. We can make a yield of 10% per year on this. So you're making 10K a year on this 100K. And then they say, oh, but wait, I know that you probably want some liquid cash to be able to do things with. So we're going to give you a loan up to 50% of that amount, interest-free. So you're now getting 50K out of your 100K to go and do whatever you want with. There's no interest on the loan, and they're going to pay off the loan with the returns from your initial principal. So they're going to take the 10K you're making on the 100K every year with 10% interest and apply it to your loan. So that loan is going to be paid off if the rate was the same in 5 years. Does that sound crazy? Does that sound like our bank system? No. What it does sound like is the world of DeFi, and that tool is called Alchemix. It's a fascinating new protocol in DeFi where you're time traveling and getting yield on your collateral up front. It is a bank that isn't a bank, so there's no branches, there's no staff, no rent, no weird billboards. It's just run with code. And it's just one of the really interesting and innovative tools that has been created in the world of DeFi that lets you do all of these things with your money that you never even thought was possible. So with Alchemix, this is an innovative version of a collateralized loan. And we have these in the real world. So when we take out a loan, we put something up as collateral. So say we get a loan to buy our house. You put your house up as collateral because if you don't pay that back, you will have your collateral taken from you. And in the real world, you're also paying an interest on the loan that you need to make regular payments on. In Alchemix, we are borrowing from ourselves and the yield from our collateral is paying off our loan. Now here's how this would look in the real world if you used Alchemix for a real world thing. So let's say David wants to get into real estate. He has $100,000 that he's saved up and he only needs $48,000 for a down payment on a new property, which he's gonna rent out and cash flow off. So rather than fork out the cash, he takes his 100K, he puts it into stablecoin DAI, which is pegged to the dollar, and then he puts it into this Alchemix protocol. Now Alchemix, they're gonna take this 100K and they're gonna give him a loan of up to 50K in ALUSD, which is their version of a stablecoin. And from there, he can do whatever he wants. He could switch it out to Bitcoin if he thinks it's going up, to Ethereum. But for now, like we said, he wants to put it into real estate. So he sends it back to his Coinbase account and then back to his bank so he can use it for a down payment. So at between 8 and 20% APR per year, it does differ. Let's say this loan takes 7 to 8 years to pay that loan back. That loan is being paid back from the interest on his collateral that is in Alchemix. So at the end of the 7 years, he has his 100K, he has a cash flowing property with equity built in. He could turn around and get another property because he could take another loan out for 50K and do it again. Here's what would have happened if he'd done the traditional way. He'd have taken his cash, he'd taken 48 cash out, and he'd have 52K left over. And if he put that into a savings account, at the highest yield possible in a regular account, he would make 0.5% per year. Now, this isn't obviously the best return, so let's say instead he decides to put it into index funds at an average of 6% per year. So at the end of 7 years, he would have $78,189. He'd have the same equity in his house, the same rent, so he would have around $22,000 less than if he had used Alchemix. And also if he sells those stock or those index funds, he would be paying capital gains on the profit. Here's the thing, you don't pay income tax on borrowed money. So you could continually take out loans, put them into things that are gonna cash flow or gain equity in, and never pay tax on that because it's a loan from yourself. Now, of course, there's opportunity costs with having your money tied up and illiquid. But if David, for example, needed to get his 100K faster, say he had a big opportunity and he wanted to get that money, he could refinance that real estate in a few years, pay off the loan manually, and still get access to his 100K because he's borrowing from himself, so he's well collateralized if he needs that. Now, say he decides to buy some altcoin and it goes to zero, that loan is still going to pay itself off, but he's essentially not able to get to that money if he's not able to pay it off. So he just is like, okay, well, until this is paid off, I cannot get to this money, but he's not actually out any money besides the interest that he's, essentially thrown into an altcoin that didn't go anywhere. Now on top of that, as the loan gets paid off, he is able to borrow more. So when 10K of the loan is paid off, so say he's getting 10% a year on 100K, that would take a year to pay off 100K. He can now take another loan of 10K and put it into something else. Now, how is it possible for a bank to do this? Well, in traditional finance, it's not. They have rent, they have employees, they have operating costs to cover, they have private jets and bonuses for their executives. They have a lot of money to go to places that don't involve you. But because the Bank of Alchemix doesn't need to cover ongoing costs of brick and mortar and all these other expenses, it can afford to make loans that are paid off at an unspecified future date. The liability of the borrower is effectively their own money. So the borrower borrows from themselves. There is no explicit ongoing interest on the borrowed LUSD, and the borrower is given an ability to collateralize the future returns on their deposits and borrow and do something in the present, which literally happens nowhere else. Now, where does Alchemix make their money? Because of course they have to make money to be able to facilitate this whole thing. And the answer is arbitrage. So due to the volume that they're doing with all of their deposits, they get a better interest rate than they are giving to you. And so they pocket the difference. Now this difference is paid to the treasury, which they use to do contract audits, to keep the security, to pay the team for bug bounties, to keep the whole thing secure. But everything is run on code. Show me the incentives, I'll show you the results. This is one of my favorite quotes by Charlie Munger because it's so true. Alchemix only gets paid if they get their users a good return, and so the incentives are aligned on both sides. Compare this with traditional finance. How many banks have been fined for doing shitty things to their customers? When Wells Fargo set insane and unrealistic goals for new customer accounts, what happened? Branches just started illegally creating new accounts that customers didn't approve of in order to hit those goals. So their incentives and the incentives of the customers were not aligned. And that's why we have things like the Customer Protection Bureau, is because of these misaligned incentives. Speaking of aligned incentives, make sure you like this video and subscribe if you want me to do more stuff like this. There's a lot of Ponzi's in crypto. This isn't one of them. This is like you're making a deal with your future self to pay back on the money that you borrowed from yourself. And you really don't have a choice because you can't get to that deposit unless you pay it off. But the great thing is everything is opportunity cost. And if you find something that you would rather do with that money, all you have to do is pay back the money that you borrowed in order to get to it. And you can pay it back anytime, or you can wait for the loan to automatically pay itself back. It's about creating wealth and savings over time rather than creating this risky leverage for yourself. Now, if you want to learn more about DeFi, you can grab the link below this to see my course, Zero to DeFi, where I will teach you how to go from, okay, I don't know anything about crypto, to being able to get into protocols like this.